To the next lecture of American Government 2. I'm your host, Dr. Michael Baggs, and our topic this week is the Texas Legislature. State legislatures play a vital role in state politics and policymaking. They are not simply smaller versions of the United States Congress. In some states, being a legislature is a full time job, and these politicians are paid significant salaries, have numerous support staff and resources, meet year round, and attend to a robust scope of activities. In these states, the state legislature salaries range from over $70,000 in Michigan to the highest in the nation, New York, where they earn $142,000 per year. However, many other states pay their legislatures very poorly, provide little staff, and only meet part time. Legislatures in Maine, Mississippi, Nebraska, North Carolina, and Texas, among others, make on average less than $15,000 per year. States that have the part time legislatures embody the idea of the citizen legislature. This idea refers to the concept that elected officials should be ordinary citizens, not professional politicians. These legislatures are envisioned to come from diverse walks of life, bringing their real world experiences and perspectives into lawmaking rather than being career politicians who are disconnected from the needs and values of the general public. This idea is often linked to the democratic principles where citizens are encouraged to take an active role in governance, serving as representatives of their communities rather than as individuals with personal political ambitions. The goal is to create a more direct and authentic connection between the government and the people it serves. The idea of the citizen legislature faces significant challenges considering that modern campaigns for office are prohibitively expensive. And when this factor is added to the poor salaries some states pay their legislatures, it basically prices these regular citizens out of politics. Nonetheless, the citizen legislature idea continues to influence debates about political reform and the design of democratic institutions. So, if many legislatures are not being paid very well, why would anyone want to be an elected state legislature? At least part of the attraction is the desire to be part of the great game of politics, to be where the action is, and to be in a place where you can affect some good for others. State legislatures have existed long before the First Continental Congress was formed in 1776, and they engage in many of the same lawmaking and oversight activities as the U.S. Congress does. They write laws, approve appropriations, approve or modify the governor's budget, conduct hearings, investigations, audits, conduct the budgeting process, ratify amendments to the Constitution, form commissions, and approve interstate compacts. Legislatures also perform countless constituent services and, along with the governor and courts, help keep the state agencies accountable to both the law and their citizens. State legislatures make or modify policies by balancing conflicting political pressures while forging compromises among political factions and interest groups within different parts of the state. State legislatures help translate public wants and aspirations into laws and regulations. Bicameralism. The Texas legislature has a bicameral structure. That is to say, it has two chambers, the House of Representatives and the Senate. This system mirrors the structure of the U.S. Congress and is meant to ensure that no one chamber takes complete control of the lawmaking process. Constitutional requirements. A member of the House must be a U.S. citizen of at least 21 years of age, a qualified voter, and a resident of the state for 2 years and of the district for 1 year. The Texas House of Representatives has 150 House members who serve 2 year terms, and each member represents a district of approximately 168,000 people. A Texas senator must be a U.S. citizen of at least 26 years of age, a qualified voter, and a resident of Texas for at least 5 years, and the district for at least 1 year. The Texas Senate has 31 senators who serve 4 year terms, and each member represents a district of over 811,000 constituents. Both House and Senate districts are single member districts. These are districts which one official is elected for each legislative chamber. Demographics of the Texas legislature. In the Texas House of Representatives, around 50% of the members are white. Around 26% of the members are Hispanic. Around 13% of the members are African American. And around 2% of the members are Asian American. And a small percentage of the House members are from other racial or ethnic groups. In the Texas Senate, around 58% of the Senate members are white, around 20% of the Senate members are Hispanics, and around 12% of the Senate members are African American, and around 1 to 2% is Asian American. The demographics of the Texas legislature have been gradually shifting, with more Hispanic and Black representatives being elected over the past several decades. Texas's changing demographics, particularly the growth of the Hispanic population, have led to increased attention on ensuring better representation for these communities. Despite the growing diversity of the state, racial and ethnic minorities, particularly Hispanics, remain underrepresented in the legislature relative to their share of the population. This is an ongoing issue that activists, community leaders, and some policymakers continue to address, especially when it comes to redistricting. There are geographic and party differences in the demographics of the legislature. Urban areas, especially in cities like Houston, Dallas, and San Antonio, have more racial and ethnic diversity in their elected representatives. In contrast, rural and suburban areas of Texas are often more racially homogeneous and less diverse in their representation. Legislative compensation. Legislatures in Texas cannot expect to live on their legislative salaries. Texas legislatures are paid a base salary of $7,200 per year. This amount has been the same since 1975, making Texas one of the lowest paying states for legislatures in the U.S. In addition to the base salary, Texas legislatures receive a per diem allowance to cover living expenses when the legislature is in session. The per diem amount is currently $221 per day during regular legislative sessions and $61 per day during interim periods when the legislature is not in session, but legislatures may still meet for committee work or special sessions. The legislatures may claim up to 12 days per month of per diem if they are in Austin on official business, 16 days if they are committee chairs. The relatively low salary and per diem structure reflect Texas's philosophy of the citizen legislature, where lawmakers are not meant to make a career of their legislative work, but instead serve as a part-time job alongside other professional pursuits. The pension system is structured to give a retirement benefit based on the legislature's years of service and the average of their highest salaries. Legislatures are eligible for a pension at age 50 after serving 8 years in the legislature or at any age after serving 12 years. The pension is calculated based on a percentage of a legislature's salary during their time in office. This percentage increases with more years of service. Given that Texas legislatures earn a relatively low salary compared to other states, their pension is viewed as a modest benefit. However, due to the longevity of service required to earn a significant pension, it is not seen as a major financial incentive for individuals to enter or to remain in the legislature. Legislative sessions, regular sessions. The Texas Constitution specifies that regular sessions of the legislature be held for 140 days biennially in odd numbered years. Thousands of bills and resolutions are introduced during a regular session. In 2019, 7,324 bills were introduced. 1,429 passed. In 2021, 6,927 bills were introduced. 1,073 passed. In 2023, 8,174 bills were introduced and only 1,100 passed. The 2025 Texas legislative session is currently ongoing, and data on the exact number of bills introduced during this session is not yet fully available. The total number of bills introduced typically increases as the session continues. Special sessions. Texas special sessions are periods when the Texas legislature meets outside of its regular biennial sessions to address specific issues or urgent matters. These sessions are called by the governor. They can last up to 30 days, and they can only address the topics that the governor specifies in the call. And the legislature cannot introduce or consider unrelated matters during that time. Because there is no limit to the number of sessions a governor can call, and since they get to set the agenda, the governor has a great control over which issues are discussed and what bills are passed. Since 1876, when the Texas Constitution was written, special sessions have been used primarily for addressing budget related matters, redistricting, and other urgent state needs. The frequency of special sessions increased somewhat during the 60s and 70s, particularly as Texas dealt with issues like education reform and the expansion of state programs. Texas had several special sessions in the 2000s and 2010s, with one of the most significant being in 2003 when Governor Rick Perry called a special session to address the state's legislative redistricting. This led to a major political and legal battle over the redrawing of district lines and was one of the most longest and most contentious special sessions in Texas history. Governor Greg Abbott called two special sessions in 2017. The first focused on issues like property tax reform, bathroom bills, and border security. The second was focused on a school finance overhaul, though it ended without significant progress. Governor Abbott called three special sessions in 2021 to address multiple issues, including election security, redistricting, and COVID 19 related bills. There were four special sessions called by the governor in 2023, and Texas has averaged at least one special session a year since 1876. Legislative functions. The main function of the Texas legislature is to make laws for the state. These laws begin as a bill, which is a proposed law that has been sponsored by a member of the legislature and submitted to the clerk of the House or the Senate. Anyone can write a bill, but only a member of the Texas legislature can sponsor or submit one. In Texas, there are three main types of bills: local bills, special bills, and general bills. They differ primarily in terms of their scope and the specific groups or issues that they address. Local bills are intended to apply to specific localities, such as a particular city, county, or district. They might address issues unique to that area, like changes in local governance, zoning laws, or the creation of a new city or district. Local bills do not have a statewide impact and are limited in their reach. For example, a local bill might introduce to create a special tax district for a neighborhood in Houston. Special bills are similar to local bills, but are intended to address specific individuals, organizations, or other entities rather than geographic locations. These bills might grant certain privileges, exemptions, or powers to a specific group, corporation, or person. For example, a special bill could be used to authorize a particular corporation to build a bridge or receive certain tax exemptions that would not apply to others. General bills are the most common type of bills and apply to the entire state of Texas. They can cover a wide range of issues such as education, healthcare, criminal law, or business regulations. These are the bills that typically become state laws if passed, and they are debated, amended, and passed by the legislature in the usual process. In the Texas legislature, there are three main types of resolutions that are used to express the will or position of the legislature on a variety of matters. Concurrent resolutions are adopted by both the Texas House of Representatives and the Texas Senate. They deal with matters that affect both chambers, such as the adoption of joint rules, setting the legislative session schedule, or expressing the legislator's opinion on certain issues. Concurrent resolutions must be submitted to the governor for approval, except for those that pertain solely to procedural matters between the two chambers, and they are filed with the Secretary of State. Example: a concurrent resolution might be passed to designate a particular day as Texas History Day or to set the date for the start of the next legislative session. Joint resolutions are introduced in either the House or the Senate, but must be approved by both chambers. They can be used to propose constitutional amendments or to ratify certain types of agreements, like international treaties or other interstate compacts. Example: a joint resolution might be introduced to propose an amendment that changes the age requirements for Texas state office holders. Simple resolutions are adopted by either the House of Representatives or the Senate alone. These are used for internal matters within the respective chambers or to express the views of that chamber. Simple resolutions can be used to honor individuals, recognize achievements, or express the position of a chamber on a particular issue. They don't require approval from the other chamber or the governor. Example: a simple resolution might be passed to honor a Texas citizen for their service or to congratulate a local sports team for winning a championship. How a bill becomes a law in Texas. The process of how a bill becomes a law in Texas is similar to the federal process, but with its own unique structure and steps. First, a bill must be introduced. A bill can be introduced by any member in the House or Senate when they file a copy of a bill with the clerk of the House or the secretary of the Senate. The legislature who introduces the bill is called the author of the bill, and they may have co authors who also support the bill. Next, there is the first reading. After a bill is introduced, it is read for the first time in the chamber where it was introduced. This is typically a formal procedure with little debate. Next, there is the referral, where the bill is assigned to the appropriate standing committee by the chamber's presiding officer, either the Speaker of the House or the Lieutenant Governor. What comes next is the committee review. Once the bill is assigned to a committee, the committee members will review the bill. The committee chair will then decide whether to study the bill or pigeonhole it. Pigeonholing is where a bill is killed by the chair as a result of them setting the bill aside and not bringing it before the committee. During the process of examining the bill, the committee will often hold public hearings where stakeholders, experts, and the public can provide testimony on the bill. The committee may even make changes to the bill, known as a markup. If there are any amendments to the bill, these are also debated. The committee may ultimately decide to approve, reject, or modify the bill. After considering amendments, the committee votes on whether to send the bill to the full chamber. If the bill passes out of committee, it moves to the next stage. If the bill survives the committee vote, the bill is then read a second time, second reading, before the full chamber, and debate begins. Legislatures can propose new amendments or make changes to the bill at this point. After the debate, the bill goes through a third reading, where the final version of the bill is voted on by the chamber. If the bill passes by a majority vote, it moves to the other chamber, the House or the Senate, for consideration. Debate in the Senate is unlimited, and senators may be able to filibuster. Filibuster is a tactic used by members of the Senate to prevent action on legislation that they oppose by continuously holding the floor and speaking until the majority backs down. Once given the floor, senators have unlimited time to speak as long as they follow Senate rules. A vote of three-fifths of the Senate is required to end a filibuster. Bill follows a similar process in the second chamber. If the bill originated in the House, it will go through the same stages in the Senate and vice versa. The bill will be assigned to committee in the second chamber, reviewed, potentially amended, and debated in the second chamber, voted on after the third reading in the second chamber. If the second chamber passes the bill without changes, the bill is sent to the governor. If the second chamber makes changes to the bill that the original chamber does not agree with, a conference committee may be formed. This committee consists of members from both the House and the Senate who work out a compromise version of the bill. After the conference committee reaches an agreement, both chambers must approve the final version of the bill. Once both chambers have passed the bill in identical form, it is sent to the governor of Texas. The governor has several options: either sign the bill, veto it, or do nothing. If the governor signs the bill, it becomes law, or the governor can veto it, preventing it from becoming law. The vetoed bill is returned to the chamber where it originated, and the legislature can attempt to override the veto with a two-thirds majority vote in both chambers. Or the governor can allow the bill to become law without signing it. If the governor does not sign or veto the bill within 10 days, excluding Sundays, it automatically becomes law if the legislature is still in session. Once the governor signs the bill, or if it becomes law without the governor's signature, the new law typically takes effect on September 1st of the year that it's passed, unless the bill specifies a different date or is deemed an emergency measure. Influences on the legislative process. The Texas Comptroller of Public Accounts plays a significant role in influencing the legislative process, primarily through financial oversight and budgetary functions. One of the key duties of the comptroller is to provide an official revenue estimate for the state of Texas. This estimate helps guide the legislature's budgeting process. Before the Texas legislature can pass a budget, the comptroller determines how much revenue the state is expected to collect over the next 2 years. This forecast gives legislatures a clearer picture of the financial resources available for spending and impacts decisions about what programs and services can be funded. The controller predicts a shortfall in revenue. Legislatures may make cuts or find ways to increase revenue through taxes or other sources. Or if the controller estimates surplus revenue, it might allow for increased spending on state programs. Once the legislature has passed the state budget, the comptroller is responsible for certifying it. This means that the comptroller must officially confirm that the budget is balanced and that the state has enough revenue to cover all planned expenditures. If the controller cannot certify the budget, for example, if expenditures exceed projected revenues, the legislature must take corrective action before the budget can become law. This gives the controller a substantial influence over the fiscal health of the state. The controller's office also provides fiscal notes on bills and resolutions, which assesses the financial impact of proposed laws. This includes estimating cost, revenues, and potential savings or losses related to new legislation. Legislatures rely on the controller's fiscal notes to understand how the proposed laws will affect the state budget. If a bill is expected to significantly impact state finances, the controller's analysis can influence whether the bill is passed, amended, or rejected. The public can influence the legislative process in several important ways, and they have various avenues to make their voices heard and shape decisions. Texans can directly contact their state representatives and senators to express their opinions on issues, propose ideas, or urge support or opposition to specific bills. Legislatures often consider public opinion when making decisions, and hearing from constituents helps them understand the needs and concerns of the people that they represent. The legislature holds committee hearings on bills, and members of the public can testify during these hearings. Anyone can register to speak in favor of or against a bill being discussed or provide expert testimony. Groups of people can organize campaigns to rally support for or against specific legislation. This can involve petitions, protests, rallies, and public awareness to highlight an issue and put pressure on lawmakers. A well organized group can attract media attention and show lawmakers that an issue is important to a large portion of their constituents. Texans can also use petitions to express support for or opposition to a law or policy. If enough people sign a petition, it can push a particular issue onto the legislative agenda. Additionally, Texas has provisions for referendums where the public votes on a law, and initiatives which allows citizens to propose laws. The public can serve as lobbyists by sending letters, writing emails, and making telephone calls urging representatives or senators to vote a certain way. The media plays a crucial role in influencing the legislative process in Texas by shaping public opinion, holding lawmakers accountable, and providing information about current issues and bills. The media can highlight certain issues, framing them in a way that influences how the public perceives those issues. News outlets, TV programs, newspapers, and online platforms can spotlight specific legislative proposals, giving them attention or criticism, which in turn can affect public support. If the media covers a particular issue extensively, it can generate public interest, leading to more constituents contacting their legislatures to express their opinions, which can sway how lawmakers vote on the issue. Journalists often investigate and report on the actions of elected officials, including their voting records, potential corruption, or any conflicts of interest. This attention can pressure lawmakers to act transparently, be more responsive to their constituents, and avoid unethical behavior. The media serves as a primary source of information about legislative activities, including proposed bills, amendments, and debates. Through news reports, editorials, and interviews with experts, the media educates the public about what's happening in the legislature and the potential impacts of the new laws. The scrutiny of federal and state courts can significantly influence the legislative agenda by shaping the laws that are enacted, prompting legislatures to address legal issues that arise from court rulings, and guiding the direction of future policy decisions. Courts, through their interpretations of laws and the Constitution, can either limit or broaden the scope of what is legally possible. If a law passed by the Texas legislature is challenged in court and found to violate the U.S. Constitution or the Texas Constitution, federal or state courts can strike down the law as unconstitutional. This provides a check on legislative actions, ensuring that they do not overstep constitutional boundaries. A court ruling that declares a law unconstitutional can prompt lawmakers to revise or repeal the law. Legislatures may need to adjust their policies to comply with the court's interpretation of constitutional rights, such as freedom of speech, equal protection of the law, or voting rights. As a result, legislatures may amend their agenda or prioritize new laws to avoid future legal challenges. Sometimes courts may not directly strike down laws, but instead issue narrow rulings or highlight areas of concern that suggest lawmakers need to take action. For example, a court might rule that a law is vague or insufficient, leaving room for improvement. Legislatures often keep court decisions in mind when drafting new laws to avoid the risk of judicial intervention. In some cases, legislatures preemptively alter laws to avoid anticipated judicial scrutiny or to align with court expectations. Leadership. In the Texas House of Representatives, power is centralized in the hands of a few key individuals and processes. This centralization allows for more streamlined decision making, particularly in a body of 150 members. The Speaker of the House is the most powerful position in the Texas House of Representatives. Elected by members of the House, the Speaker controls much of the legislative agenda and has significant influence over which bills get heard and voted on. The Speaker decides which bills and resolutions are brought to the floor for debate and votes, and they have significant control over the legislative calendar. Much of the work of the Texas House is done in committees, and the committee chairs hold substantial power. The Speaker controls committee assignments and can place loyal members in key committees to ensure that the legislative agenda aligns with their priorities. Committees like the Appropriation, Ways and Means, and Calendars have significant sway because they deal with budgeting, tax policy, and the scheduling of bills for debate, respectively. Committees can make or break a bill. If a bill is stalled in committee, it will often never reach the House floor for a full vote, meaning committee chairs play a major role in deciding the fate of legislation. The House Calendars Committee is one of the most powerful committees, and it determines when and if bills will be brought to the floor for debate. The Speaker appoints members to this committee, so they have a major role in controlling the flow of legislation in the chamber. Without approval from the Calendars Committee, a bill is unlikely to be scheduled for debate, even if it is passed through other committees. Therefore, the Speaker's influence over this committee is a key part of centralizing power. The Speaker, as the presiding officer of the House, presides over debates, maintaining order and deciding who may speak. They can call for votes, and their rulings on procedural matters are usually final. The Lieutenant Governor of Texas holds one of the most powerful positions in the state's Senate. Unlike in many other states, the Lieutenant Governor is not just a ceremonial figurehead, but plays a central role in shaping legislative decisions. Lieutenant Governor serves as the presiding officer of the Senate, meaning they oversee Senate sessions, maintain order during debates, and ensure that the legislative process runs smoothly. The Lieutenant Governor decides who gets to speak on the Senate floor. This gives them substantial influence over the flow of discussion and debate on bills. They may make rulings on procedural matters such as which motions are in order or whether amendments can be introduced during the debates. By controlling the flow of the debate, the Lieutenant Governor can steer discussions in the direction they prefer and ensure that the legislative agenda is followed. The Lieutenant Governor has significant influence over Senate committees, which are crucial in the legislative process. They appoint the committee chairs and members, which gives them a lot of control over which bills move forward and which ones get sidelined. Some of the most powerful committees, such as the Finance Committee and the State Affairs Committee, are under the Lieutenant Governor's control. These committees have a major impact on policy and lawmaking. The Lieutenant Governor works with Senate leadership to determine which bills will be brought to the floor for debate and voting. They can prioritize certain legislation by ensuring that it reaches the floor quickly or giving it a prominent place on the agenda. As the presiding officer, the Lieutenant Governor has the power to cast tie-breaking votes in the Senate. This means that in close votes, where there is a tie, the Lieutenant Governor's vote becomes decisive. The Lieutenant Governor is an elected statewide office holder, which means they have a political mandate from the entire state, not just a district. This gives them significant political leverage in the legislature, as they represent a broader constituency. As the only statewide elected official within a leadership role in the Senate, the Lieutenant Governor's political influence extends beyond legislative affairs. Their ability to rally support from across the state can be used to push forward their legislative priorities. Centralizing power. In the Texas legislature, power has become centralized in the Speaker and the Lieutenant Governor. For instance, senators are required to take up bills and resolutions for debate according to regular order of business. The regular order in the Texas legislative process is a structured series of steps that ensures bills are thoroughly reviewed, debated, and amended before they can become law. This regular order was discussed earlier. Senate rules also provide a means of getting around the regular order of business requirement. A bill, joint resolution, or other resolution may be considered out of its regular calendar order if two-thirds of the members present vote to suspend the regular order of business. As the Texas Senate has become more partisan, it is not surprising that Lieutenant Governor Patrick was able to successfully change Senate rules to abolish the two-thirds rule altogether in 2015. Republicans did not want to rely on having to lure a single Democrat senator in order to pass their preferred legislation. Also, in the House, the power of recognition allows the Speaker to determine who speaks and how long debate will last. The Speaker and the Lieutenant Governor have the power to assign members to standing committees and to appoint the chairs of those committees. Legislators' party affiliation and seniority are only of moderate importance. Loyalty and personal relationships are more important. The Speaker and Lieutenant Governor can choose the committees to which they send a bill, influencing its fate. The leaders also determine who is on the conference committee. Redistricting. Redistricting in Texas has become a contentious issue for many years, primarily because of the state's political and demographic shifts. Redistricting is the process of redrawing election districts and redistributing the legislative representatives in the Texas House, Texas Senate, and U.S. House of Representatives every 10 years to reflect shifts in population. Texas, like many states, has seen partisan gerrymandering, where district boundaries are drawn to benefit one particular party over another. The Texas legislature is in charge of the process, but the Legislative Redistricting Board rules in cases where the two chambers cannot come to an agreement. Districts must have roughly equal populations to adhere to the one person, one vote principle. This is a legal precedent that one person's voting power ought to be roughly equivalent to another person's within the same state. The case, Reynolds versus Sims, 1964, held that states must redistrict in a way that preserves state legislative districts with roughly equal populations, explaining, quote, the Equal Protection Clause requires substantially equal legislative representation for all citizens in a state regardless of where they reside, end quote. The Republican Party gained a majority in the Texas legislature in 2002 for the first time in over 100 years and began redrawing the congressional districts. In 2006, the U.S. Supreme Court upheld most of the new boundaries drawn in the Republicans' controversial redistricting plan, but found that some of the redrawn districts failed to protect minority voting rights. The new maps drawn by Republicans after the 2010 and 2020 census again ended up in the federal court system. In both instances, the districts had to be redrawn so as to not disenfranchise minority voters. Non legislative powers. Legislatures use their powers to serve their constituents in a wide variety of actions. Legislatures or their staff often serve as a point of contact for constituents who need help navigating state government or dealing with bureaucratic challenges. This can include assisting with issues related to unemployment benefits, veteran services, Medicaid, or other state services. By helping constituents resolve problems, legislatures strengthen their connection to the community and demonstrate their commitment to serving their district. Legislatures often engage in regular communication with their constituents to stay informed about local concerns and to keep people updated on what's happening in the state legislature. This can be done through newsletters, town hall meetings, social media, or community events. By maintaining open lines of communication, legislatures can better understand the needs of their constituents and tailor their efforts accordingly. In addition to their legislative duties of making laws, the Texas legislature has several non legislative responsibilities. These duties typically focus on oversight, appointments, and approving key state actions. Oversight of the executive branch. The Texas legislature plays a critical role in overseeing the actions of the executive branch, the governor, and the state agencies. Legislatures often investigate the operations and spending of state agencies, holding hearings and issuing reports to ensure that public funds are being used appropriately and that agencies are following the law. Officials, including the governor, while the Texas Senate serves as the court for impeachment trials. If an official is convicted, they may be removed from office. The legislature has the power to propose amendments to the Texas Constitution. A constitutional amendment requires approval by a two-thirds vote of both the Texas House and the Senate. Once the legislature approves an amendment, it is then put to the voters in a statewide referendum for final approval. The Texas Senate confirms key appointments made by the governor, such as the heads of state agencies, judicial vacancies between elections, and members of various boards and commissions. This gives the legislature a significant role in shaping the state governments beyond simply passing laws. While the governor has the power to propose a budget, the Texas legislature is responsible for appropriating funds. The legislature has the ultimate say in the state's budget, determining how much funding various state agencies, programs, and services will receive. It is also responsible for passing the state's General Appropriations Act, the state budget, which can serve as a check on the governor's financial priorities. The legislature also has a role in approving certain local or statewide propositions for inclusion on the ballot. For example, they may approve a referenda or bond measures for public approval, such as those related to school funding or local infrastructure projects. The end. And